Okay guys, so to get more practice on domain and range, I'm going to go over an assignment that I went over with my afternoon classes. And if you're listening, if you're in my afternoon classes, then go ahead and finish up the paper. If you're in my morning classes and you would like to get a copy of this assignment so you can practice more, let me know when you come to class on Monday, and I'll be more than happy to give you a copy. Okay, so we're going to practice domain and range by creating boxes. And I'm going to demonstrate how to create a box on answer choice B. Notice how I only marked the lines. I didn't mark in between two lines. I really focused on the lines that gave me the outer edge of my box. The way that you know you did the box correctly is because the box should contain the entire line segment in this case, or the curve, or it should contain the entire piece that you're looking at. Okay, so remember, X and Y went to the doctor. Okay. X is our domain, Y is our range. So we're going to start by looking at domain. And to look at domain, we have to look at the x-axis. We have to look at where does our box start and where does it end. And counting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, our box starts at -5. And it's going to end at +6. So now that I have labeled where it starts and ends, I'm going to go to my paper. I'm looking at B. My domain, I'm going to write these numbers, goes from -5 to 6. Domain, I'm looking at X, because X and Y went to the doctor, X is domain, so I'm going to write an X in between my numbers. I'm always going to have less than signs. And the question is, am I using the -5? So here's -5 on our x-axis. I'm going to look around the edges of my box. And do I have a closed circle? Yes, I have a closed circle right here, which means I am using -5. So I'm going to put a line underneath it. Am I using 6? So the trick is, I'm going to look at 6 on the x-axis. Remember, I'm looking at domain. And here's 6. And looking around the edges of my box, I see that I have a closed circle, which means I am using 6, which means I'm going to put a line underneath my less than sign. And there I have domain. To look at range, I'm going to look at the y-axis, because remember, X and Y went to the doctor. Y is the range. And so to figure out range, I'm going to look at where does my box start and end. And here, counting down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My box starts at -7. And I apologize if you cannot see that. I guess I'm going to have to stick to orange. And it goes up to 1, 2, 3. +3. So on my y-axis, which goes up and down, my box starts at -7 and it ends at +3. I'm going to write that on my range, -7 to 3. Range, I'm looking at the y, so I'm going to write a y in the middle. I'm always going to have less than signs. But the question is, are they going to have lines underneath or no? So when y is -7, I'm going to look at the edge of my box I see that at the edge of my box I have a closed circle, which means I am using -7, which means I'm going to put a line underneath. When y is +3, which is right here, I look around the edges of my box, and I see I have a closed circle, which means I am using the 3, which means I put a line underneath. And so there I have domain and range. I'm not going to do C because C is very similar to B. I'm going to go ahead and do A. Now for A, because I have an arrow, my box is not going to be nice like on B. I'm actually not going to be able to make a complete box. As one of my students put it in 7th period, I'm going to have an infinite box or a never-ending box. And so I'm going to start on this corner because I have a circle. So I'm going to start making the line, the edge of my box. And what do you guys notice? Can I stop my box anyway? Not really. What do we say an arrow means? It means that this line is going to keep going on forever and ever, right? So I can literally extend that line, and I would extend it to the rest of my paper, but I don't want to get into I don't want to mess up answer choice E. But whenever you're taking a test, exaggerate those arrows so that you really get the idea that that line is just gonna keep on going and going and going. It's never gonna stop. So because of that, because this line is gonna keep going and going and going, my box is also gonna continue on. It's gonna keep on going and going and going. And same thing on the top. My box, even though I can start it here because I don't have an arrow here, I cannot really stop it anywhere because this line is going to continue going and going and going. So let's look at domain. Remember, when I look at domain, I'm looking at the x-axis. So here's my x. And my box starts at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -5. And does it end anywhere? Nope. So it's going to go to positive infinity. Some of my students in my class were complaining they didn't understand infinity, and I told them don't worry too much about understanding infinity, just remember how to set up your domain. So this is problem A. For my domain, I'm going to put -5, and you can write positive infinity, you don't have to. So I'm just going to write an x, and I'm not going to write positive infinity. And then I'm going to have a less than sign. And the question is, am I going to have a line underneath that less than? Well, as I look through this edge, I have an open circle when x is -5. Remember, this is my x-axis. And I have an open circle, so that means I'm not using the -5, which means I do not put a line underneath it. Something else that you need to remember is this is the same as x is greater than -5. Because remember, in this problem, the crocodile wants to eat x. You can choose to say x and then the crocodile is trying to eat x. You can switch those out as long as your crocodile is facing the same thing it was facing before. So this and this are two things that you can possibly see whenever you're taking the test. They both mean the same thing and they're both correct. Again, if you don't want to write infinity, then you don't have to write infinity. Range. Remember, for range, I am looking at my y-axis. I'm looking at this problem. I see that my box doesn't really start anywhere because this line's going to keep going down forever and ever and ever. So really I'm going from negative infinity all the way up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So my range is going from negative infinity to 8. If I don't want to write infinity, that's fine. All I have to write is 8. And my line, a less than. And am I using the 8? So I go to y equals 8. And looking at the edge of this box, I see that I have an open circle, which means I am not using 8, so I do not write a line underneath. And that is it. If you don't remember which side the 8 goes on, then you do need to write negative infinity. Because you would say, my range is from negative infinity to 8. And then whenever you're getting ready to pick an answer on a test, all you have to do is just put your finger on top of that, and you're left with y is less than 8. Same thing on the top with domain. Our domain went from negative 5 to positive infinity. So the way that you would write it is negative 5 to positive infinity. And then whenever you're taking the test, all you have to do is cover that up and you have your answer. So I would say for now, do write your infinities and just put your finger on top of them whenever you pick an answer choices. Okay, so this last one that I want to go over is E, only because it looks very different from all the other ones, except that. So on E, if I want to make a box here, my box is going to be really skinny because I'm not really going to have any width on it because I'm only using one Y value. So this box would just look like that, like you took a box and you just flattened it out. So here it's pretty interesting. To find domain, I'm looking at the x-axis. My x starts at, well, my box starts at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 6. And it ends at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, positive 7. So my domain for E is going to go from negative 6 to 7. I'm looking at domain, which means I'm looking at the x value, so I'm going to put an x in the middle. I have an open circle when x is negative 6. That means I'm not using the negative 6. So I am not going to have a line underneath this less than sign. I have a closed circle when x equals 7. So I am going to use 7, which means I am going to put a line underneath. And that's my domain. For my range, I see that my box starts at 2 and it ends at 2. So my range is just going to be 2. And that's it. Okay, so I have shown you some examples for domain and range. If you want to get more practice, ask me for this assignment. If you're in my morning classes, you haven't gotten it. Other than that, good luck. Ask me any questions as you can on Monday so that you are ready for your test on Tuesday.